I'm going to show you everything that I wish somebody would have told me when my gut symptoms first started. It took over a year to get diagnosed. The diagnosis wasn't even correct. What was causing 90% of my symptoms wasn't even part of the conversation with my doctor. We're mostly going to be focusing on gut issues, but we're also going to go over some autoimmune diseases. If we were to meet one-on-one, this is exactly what I would tell you. It's actually much better because I wouldn't have all these visual props in the slideshow to show you. So growing up, I had digestive issues. I was extremely skinny. The girls wanted nothing to do with me. I was always like the smallest guy on the hockey team. Even after years of doing natural treatments, I was still only 150 pounds, about 70 kilograms, still super underweight. It wasn't until I started doing the things that I'm going to show you in this webinar that I started to put on weight, and I was actually able to do this while eating whatever I wanted. This is proof that I was actually diagnosed. This is a biopsies. I had inflammation in my stomach, in the last part of the small, so here I had inflammation. Down here I had inflammation, and here I had inflammation in the last part of the colon. So that could have been diagnosed as Crohn's, colitis, gastritis. My gallbladder was causing so many symptoms, and I see this all the time. I had horrible acne. My acne's gone. I can't remember the last time I had a pimple. I made this transformation in a month or two when I started to get to the real root cause. Essentially what I'm sharing with you is a mini version of my 13-day protocol. If I had a time machine, this is what I would give myself to get better as fast as possible, and this is what I use to help people get better.
8 times a day, I'd have to go to the bathroom. It was either pure blood or pink mucus every time. I was afraid to leave the house. And anytime I left the house, I was thinking of like, where's the nearest bathroom? I can't do anything for more than an hour. And anytime I rode my motorcycle, my stomach was bothering me. And I was like, man, I can't even enjoy riding. It was awful. It was so terrible.
And that's going to antagonize the conflict because now you can't work and talk to girls because your symptoms.
That's another thing too, right? I can't go on dates. I can't date this quality woman that I want in my life, because how can you date someone when you have to go to the bathroom 8 times a day? I was afraid to leave the house because I had to know where the nearest bathroom was. Now that doesn't even cross my mind. It's all because of your program. So always forever grateful to you, Mike.
So we're one realization away from stopping our symptoms. We're one realization away from doing many things, like inventing the light bulb. It just took somebody X amount of realizations to achieve anything in life. Right here in this video, I'm going to give you tons of realizations to have your brain stop putting your gut in and out of overdrive, and I have tons of information to support that statement right there. So all the testimonials you see right here, these people all watched an older version, a less better. You're seeing a much better version of this webinar than these people did, or they enrolled in my 13-day, they purchased my 13-day protocol and they got better with that. What this does is it rewires your subconscious mind so it's no longer puts your gut in and out of overdrive when it encounters PTSD triggers or a conflict relapse of the conflict that put your gut into overdrive. I have tried every diet you can think of. I've worked on farms. I've gotten my hands on hundreds of books and lab studies. Most of the best lab studies are behind like a $25, $50 paywall. I've tried almost every supplement. I've done almost every single natural remedy. And if I haven't tried it, I've worked with somebody who's tried them. So I remember when my drugs stopped working and they really never did anything to begin with. And I was like, I'm gonna go the holistic route. And so we have like cute little infographics like this where it's like, the holistic means the whole, to take the whole organism into account. And when you look at most holistic therapies, they're mainly focused on the physical. They're focused on nutrition, the gut microbiome, detoxing, and they're not really focusing much on these other three areas, which is really important considering that your brain controls your whole entire body. So this brilliant German doctor could look at your brain CT scan and know exactly what health conditions they would have. Each disease has a very specific place in the brain where a ring, a 3D ring, will impact. Think about it. If you've ever been hit with a stressful situation, it's like your brain gets struck by a bolt of lightning. Either you go crazy with rage or you're paralyzed with fear. It is common knowledge in the psych community that trauma rewires the brain. And I got my brain CT scan done, and right where the rings were supposed to be, they were there. First, let's talk about stomach ulcers, acid reflux, gastritis, heartburn, H. pylori, we can also put into there. Everybody who has these conditions, they're going to have a ring in this part of their brain on a CT scan, right about here. This is going to be caused by a conflict shock of, for males, either it's going to be a territorial anger, like 99% of the time. And then for a female, it can be a territorial anger or an identity conflict. When the conflict is active, for example, one person I worked with, his heartburn got really bad. I think he was about 20, and he moved into a house, and the landlord was just super annoying. And that caused cell loss, and it only happens at the top part of the stomach here. Most of the ulcers are in the duodenum and up here at the top on this top curve. You think they would form down here because gravity, and that's where the stomach acid hangs out, but most of them are on the lesser curvature, and then the majority of them are in the duodenum because it's made out of special tissue. This part of the stomach and then that part of the stomach, they're made out of different types of cells. The way that this organ responds during conflict activity is cell loss. And so that's going to create a burning pain, and it also causes the sphincter up here to not close correctly, and the acid bubbles up, and that's when we get reflux. But when the conflict gets resolved, the cell loss stops, so the burning pain stops. It switches to a pressure pain, and this can happen in seconds. And this is when the cell loss gets restored with cell restoration, and that's when a lot of the unpleasant symptoms start, such as vomiting, indigestion, fever, headaches, and the intensity of the symptoms are always relative to the intensity you experience the conflict. You might consciously experience the conflict intensely, but we never really know how intense our subconscious is experiencing the conflict. And our subconscious literally runs probably 0.9% of the functions in our body. This is more of a subconscious stress that maybe you're very consciously aware of this stressful situation or only a little bit consciously aware of this situation. Here, this is Dr. Burrell Crohn's. He was the guy who discovered Crohn's disease. He wrote a book about stomach ulcers that's really good. This is literally the first sentence of his books. It is a disease of a tense, nervous person who lives a strenuous and worrisome life. Here it makes it sound like stress causes stomach ulcers. What causes stomach ulcers is a conflict shock that you subconsciously experienced as a territorial anger as a man, or as a woman, it could be territorial anger or an identity conflict. And the stress that stems from that shocking moment causes the symptoms, not stress in general. So some things you can do to make the ulcer pain less while you're dealing with this conflict and getting it under control. Dr. Burrell Crohn said it's good to eat high protein foods like anything from starches and grains and meats because it neutralizes the acid, or to sip on baking soda, not baking powder. You mix it in water and you sip on that slowly to neutralize the acid sitting in the stomach and sitting in the ulcers.
Immediately the next day after I started a program, I caught on real quick to the fact that the food intolerances I had that were mainly triggering these bouts of being bedridden were just all in my head. So relieved. And I went out and ate a burger, which I hadn't done for like 5 months. It tasted awesome. It tasted amazing. Ever since then, I've been eating whatever I want.
Gastroparesis is a condition where the stomach muscles aren't moving correctly and it doesn't move the food out of the stomach, it just sits there. And this is caused by a conflict shock of, I need more time to digest and break down this thing important to my survival. The stomach is actually a very muscular organ. When something's sitting in your stomach, it's actually like mixing the digestive juices with very powerful muscles. Your subconscious mind has decided to not squeeze the contents of the stomach out of the stomach, because for some subconscious reason, and it's not just food, it could be like, oh, I need to digest this relationship, I need to digest this job. You subconsciously need more time to digest this important thing to your survival. Every other muscle in your body works just fine except for this one, and these muscles are controlled by our brain. So this is somebody who used my 13-day protocol to get rid of their stomach issues. A lot of people think that they have to never experience a negative emotion again. They get all angry with themselves when they get angry at something. In reality, a lot of the times, we just have to consciously see the traumatic event that put our gut into overdrive and its PTSD triggers, and the brain just goes, ah, okay, yeah, it's kind of dumb to put our gut into overdrive. Every time I see my landlord, even though I really like this landlord, it was that stupid landlord from the past that caused my issues. Okay, I'll stop putting the stomach into overdrive. I don't know why, but making these realizations many of the time stop the symptoms. But essentially what my program does, most people who start trying to heal their gut this way, they don't know what conflict put their gut into overdrive. And the exercises on this workbook, they help your brain free up these trapped memories that have been just buried in our subconscious mind. The act of freeing them, uncovering them, many times stops the symptoms. 75, 80% of the time stops the symptoms. And when you look at the old lab studies that talk, like in the 1950s and before, the Mayo Clinic said that these autoimmune diseases were psychosomatic diseases that started after a traumatic event. It was common knowledge among the GI doctors. Anybody showed up to the ER, they always knew it was after a traumatic event, even if the person didn't own up to it. And they said it was a skill to get this information out of the patient. But here are just some of the lab studies that I have found that support both old and new, that clearly show gut disease starts and intensifies around the time of a traumatic event. Here's a lab study that shows just stressing rats out will give them colitis, and this study was done in 2019. These were studies where they would hook people up to a bunch of machines and talk about their conflicts and whatnot, or talk about things that made them happy, and they would watch their gut activity change in real time while talking to these people. They did it in this one as well. There's just tons of data from 2012. They show that antidepressants can help with gut issues, and that makes sense because it helps the person experience the conflict less. This is just more evidence showing that it's caused by these stressful events. This lab study is showing that just stressing a rat out will change its gut microbiome. This study was from 2022. Heat stress changes the rat's gut microbiome. And so I won't go over all of these, but there's just tons and tons of studies that support this. This is a cool article. It's showing like all the different types of stressful events. A Navy retirement, the person graduated their first year of college, grandma passed away, boyfriend passed away, a marriage, a son gets badly burned, a hernia operation, a hysterectomy, a death in the family, a mother's death, the son gets arrested, somebody gets pregnant and the husband leaves, the girlfriend left, a shotgun marriage, an ear operation, a stressful move, grandma passes away, mother-in-law passes away, divorce, mother gets a cancer diagnosis, hysterectomy, business crisis, unexpected pregnancy, move to a new job/town, a work crisis, mother gets diagnosed with cancer, begin a new school, job transfers. And you see this in our language. I'm very guilty of saying, oh, that's a bunch of crap. I can't deal with your crap right now. You make me sick to my stomach. The other day I was at a restaurant and this person who just stank, they ate like slob. I literally wanted to puke and I had zero appetite until that person left, and then I could eat. These phrases don't make sense logically, but we use them all the time, and they're actually in many other languages as well. And when you look at primitive life forms, I guess you could say, babies, they put everything in their mouth. Dogs and cats, they put everything in their mouth. And the most primitive life forms, they're literally just a big digestive tract, and a lot of them like don't even have eyes. So the primitive part of our brain almost experiences everything as food. Like when I get up in the morning and I need to put on my glasses, the primitive part of my brain is, get glasses. digest and absorb glasses. Okay, we're going to bed. Get rid of poop out glasses, and I'll eat some more glasses in the morning. And now, like, if this were like a face hugger trying to jump on my face, from Aliens, like, whoa, I gotta get rid of this crap. And it might put my colon into overdrive. And that's a subconscious thing that you're not consciously control of, so it's not your fault that this happens. So the cause of your autoimmune and gut issues is a traumatic event or a conflict shock that caught you off guard. So the cure then is altering the conscious and subconscious memory of that event. The cure is altering the conscious and subconscious memory of that traumatic event. When people get started with GNM, one of the main concerns that I hear is, okay, great, I found my conflict, and a lot of the times they hadn't found their conflict. They found their conflict, but they didn't find the shocking moment that put the organ into overdrive. What my program does is it keeps the person on track. When you start to study GNM, a lot of people feel let down that it doesn't help the person resolve the conflict and find and neutralize their PTSD triggers or tracks that keep putting their gut or keep putting whatever organ in and out of overdrive. This is what my 13-day protocol does. It guides somebody's brain to have that realization, oh, I react to pizza, but I don't react to bread or cheese or dairy. I only react to pizza because back in the day I got into a fight with a friend over a pizza. I know it sounds stupid, but he ate the last pizza and we got into a big fight and I paid for the pizza and he didn't. And when I made that realization, oh wow, that's when I started reacting to pizza. You can feel it, it's like goosebumps. The hair on the back of your neck stands up. I'm trying to get you to have those realizations. And if I were to do that with people one-on-one, I can literally only do 2 or 3 sessions a day before I'm burnt out and I've lost my voice. That is why I have made this. There's something about writing and putting pen to paper that really just digs deep into the subconscious and pulls these things up. So next we're going to talk about the small intestine, and this is controlled from the brainstem. In the small intestine, like the stomach is controlled, special programs controlled there. This is, the small intestine's there or there. And I showed in a little bit better detail there. See how everything's mapped out? When I saw these pictures, I was like, I've never seen disease in the body explained more intelligently than this. So with the small intestine, the conflict is, what is something important to my survival that I cannot absorb? And I'm usually angry, frustrated, and annoyed. I can't absorb this thing. Now there's 2 types of growths that can happen in the intestine, but in the small intestine, there can only be flat growths. And flat growths aid with absorption. In the stomach, a cauliflower growth can grow, and it aids with digestion. Sometimes you'll hear it described as indigestible anger. I can't digest this thing. But it's more accurate to say, I can't absorb this important thing to my survival. Maybe it's a boyfriend or a girlfriend. For me, it was video games. I can't digest video games. I can't digest girls. Like, those are my 2 biggest frustrations in life. What couldn't you digest when your symptoms started? So during the conflict active phase, there's cell proliferation. This would probably on an MRI, they would say thickening of the intestinal walls. Let's say it's a girlfriend. And when you find a new girlfriend or you join the nunnery, the conflict gets resolved, and that's when the body starts to get rid of these extra gut cells. And it is a bloody, mucousy, painful process. And not only is this being fixed, also the brain relay is healing as well, and that will cause fevers and headaches. And another thing people experience during this healing phase is night sweats. So during the conflict active phase, while the cells are growing, there's actually bacteria and fungi growing behind the scenes, but they're not really causing any trouble just yet. When the conflict gets resolved, These extra gut cells get removed with the help of bacteria and fungi, and that's why taking things like antibiotics can greatly reduce the symptoms, because there's less bacteria and fungi removing these extra gut cells. Now, in a perfect world where if you join the nunnery and you stay there and like boys are no longer a problem for you, then most likely this process won't be go on and off, on and off, on and off. But if there's PTSD triggers or tracks active, like maybe every time you talk to the priest, it's a subconscious reminder that you can't digest boys, and it throws the gut into overdrive and you get symptoms. You're like, why do I always get symptoms when I talk to a priest? Doesn't make any sense. It's because it's this old memory trapped in your subconscious, old traumatic memory trapped in your subconscious. My program is designed to yank these memories up. So usually when this is happening to the gut, usually the person will have diarrhea, but if it's really intense, there will be blood in the stool, and it should be like much darker, like almost a purple. If there's bleeding in the small intestine and the blood shows up in the stool, it's going to be very dark. Where if it's in the colon, it's going to be a brighter red. You really can't tell if somebody has Crohn's disease or if there's something going on in the small intestine until you do some sort of an MRI or a capsule endoscopy. Dr. Burrell Crohn did not want to call this condition Crohn's disease when there's inflammation in the small intestine. Crohn's disease today, technically, the definition's a little bit different depending on what website you look on. Inflammation anywhere from mouth to butthole, but it usually gets diagnosed when they find inflammation in the last part of the small intestine, right about here. I was technically diagnosed with Crohn's disease, but I literally had gastritis, gallbladderitis or BAM, regional ileitis, and I also had colitis or sigmoiditis, depending on who you talk to. He wanted to call it regional ileitis because that's just what you traditionally did in medicine. You just tried to describe what you saw. And I also had a perianal fistula. So those are 4 separate conditions. It's just looking at them as Crohn's disease does not help with communication, and it doesn't help us solve these problems at all. And somebody with Crohn's disease is just having a lot of conflict relapses, and they're experiencing a lot of PTSD triggers that keep putting the gut in and out of overdrive, in and out of overdrive.
My main issue was pain, horrible pain. After a week, my symptoms gone completely. Everything was under control.
Mehdi was using my 13-day protocol, and as you hear him, he said in the first week, his pain was pretty much gone and he was eating whatever he wanted. And this was years of trying holistic things and trying everything that the doctor told him to do. And his life was relatively peaceful. It was literally just the PTSD triggers just causing havoc in his gut. He said on day 7, he had this aha moment that he's like, oh yeah, every time my coworkers do something stupid at work, it reminds me of the time where I was in the military and I would just get in trouble all the time for when my comrades did something stupid. So the current definition of celiac disease is the small intestine is reacting to gluten and it gives us symptoms. But since the dawn of time, the word celiac disease was kind of like the way we use Crohn's disease now. Remember, back in the day, you did not, oh, he has diarrhea. You didn't know if the diarrhea was caused by the colon or the small intestine or the gallbladder. You just didn't know because you didn't have that type of technology. So they said, celiac, you have abdominal issues. But in the 1950s, this doctor, he lived in Denmark, and so they were occupied by the Nazis for 5 years, and he was treating children in a hospital. While occupied by Nazis, they're starving to death. These kids were experiencing tons of stress. Their parents probably passed away. Their life had been turned upside down. And somehow he got this crazy idea that gluten was causing their digestive issues. And so he was the first person to slowly change the name of celiac disease to mean gluten intolerance. And when you go back and you look over his work, removing gluten from kids' diets did not help. So this is how gluten intolerance really happens. It's a conflict shock, and somehow gluten is involved. This man was eating a sandwich on the subway, and I guess you're not allowed to do that, and a cop came up to him and said, hey, put down the sandwich. They got into a fight and ended up going to jail. Now the brain, every time it sees bread, might be like, oh, we got to put the colon into overdrive. Another way that I see people develop a gluten sensitivity is they get their first flare, they're freaking out, they see blood in the toilet, they're like, oh my God, what happened? Oh my God, my friend, they said they went gluten-free and everything it was gluten. It was for sure gluten. Or they go on YouTube and they watch something and somebody says gluten's bad for them. Their brain is in a very vulnerable state when we're stressed out. And if they read some literature, which most holistic literature nowadays, gluten is the devil, even though if you read the Bible, it's referred to as the body of Christ and the staff of life, the brain registers as this crap we need to get rid of, and every time you eat it, get rid of it. So in the 90s and early 2000s, Alessio Fanzio, he's an Italian doctor, and he really, you can't make this stuff up, but he's the one who coined the term leaky gut and made it popular, and also made gluten intolerance popular. I can't make this stuff up. It's like literally clown world. And the hilarious thing about gluten is found in every single grain. It's protein in storage form. And they're going to demonize grains. Grains are bad. Grains are so bad. Plant seeds are so bad. But then they're somehow going to justify nuts being safe to eat, even though they are plant seeds that are much harder to digest. Tree nuts in general require a lot more cooking to make them easier on the stomach to digest. But if you are having a major reaction to gluten, then you proceed with caution while trying to untangle the memory that's causing your body to freak out every time it encounters gluten. So what causes food intolerances? Food intolerances, for some reason, your brain sees these as bad things and we need to get rid of them as fast as possible. And this does not make sense from a survival standpoint because it's very hard to get food in the wild. So why would it just get rid of food? I used to react to cappuccinos. I could have coffee just fine. I could put milk in it and be just fine. Cappuccino, literally within seconds, I would have to run to the bathroom. Until one day I realized I had a breakup that involved a cappuccino. So one day I was on the rocks with my girlfriend and she went on a date with a guy, and the guy ended up posting pictures of them together at a coffee shop, and they were holding these giant cappuccinos. They were like served in a bowl, so it was like ridiculous, and it like really stood out. And we had this big fight, and cappuccino this, go have fun with your cappuccino, boy. A stupid fight like that. Just having that realization made it so I can have cappuccinos without issue now. A lot of kids, they're just like force-fed food. You're strapped to a chair like you're in an insane asylum, and your parents just smash food into your face. Depending on that kid's unique personality, I hated just the smell of green vegetables or green beans would make me go to the bathroom until I made that realization. Oh yeah, my parents, they made me eat green beans, and I cried and screamed every time it happened. I used to react to eggs, and it was because every once in a while my dad would make eggs, and he would make them like really runny. And again, a lot of the food intolerances that I see, probably the majority of them, is somebody's desperate, they don't know what to do, and they go on some crazy holistic diet, and for literally like 300 pages, they're just demonizing normal foods. I did not react to gluten until I read GAPS diet, or specific carbohydrate diets, or grain brain. But then when I learned the basics of GNM and it was all caused by traumatic events, boom, like literally the next second, I was eating bread and croissants and all these tasty foods and having zero symptoms. So this person was like literally on like day 3, and he was able to eat whatever he wanted. And he'd been on a strict carnivore diet, like not even allowed to have butter on his steak for 3 years. And he loved going out and drinking beers and eating foods and hanging out with his friends, but he literally couldn't do that because he couldn't follow his diet if he did that. 3 days, he had the realizations that he needed to eat literally whatever he wanted. And this is him text messaging me being like, I drank beers all night, I had all these different fries, and then the next day I went and I got Starbucks and I was absolutely fine.
Probably a year of no symptoms on the carnivore diet.
Yeah, and you had a very stress-free life at that time too.
And then I returned back to my old life of full-time corporate work. And I think within a month, all my symptoms had come back. and I
Yeah.
was running to the bathroom upwards of 6 times, sometimes
times,
8
yeah.
times a day.
And that was
Been a
even when
pretty
you were doing carnivore.
Yeah, I was eating the same thing, which really
Yeah.
puzzled me. It's been really cool to just be able to eat most things that I haven't eaten in a long time.
He's got milk right there.
I was just thinking earlier this morning that I've had more burgers in the last 2 weeks than I've had in the last probably 10 years. And then the other thing that I've really gotten back into, which never thought would happen, was milkshakes, like actual full dairy milkshake. It's a real gift to be able to walk out the house and know that I could eat anything anywhere.
So let's talk about conditions of the colon. Colitis. Itis literally just means inflammation. So if somebody gets diagnosed with colitis, it means some part of their colon is inflamed. Sometimes they call it pancolitis, and this is the whole colon is inflamed. Sometimes they call it diverticulitis, and that means there's little pockets forming off of the colon. It's literally the same thing, it's more intense. It's been going on for a long time and very intensely if it's developed pockets. Ulcerative colitis just means that there's open wounds that are bleeding instead of it just being inflamed. You can also find polyps, which are small growths. The conflict for colitis, or the colon, we could say, it depends on what type of growths we see. So I had polyps and just general inflammation. So if it's just flat growths, what do the flat growths do? They help us absorb. So the colon, if it has flat growths, is going to be, what is something important to my survival that I had almost got done digesting and absorbing and was about to just get rid of it, but I couldn't. Oh, I was about to buy this house. I was about to have the house of my dreams. And all I had to do was sign on the dotted line, and then the deal just didn't go through for whatever reason. There could also be cauliflower growths. And this is what is crap I couldn't break down and get rid of. And the amount of cells that grow depend on the intensity and the length of the conflict. And when the conflict gets resolved, the body gets rid of these extra gut cells, and that's when the fun starts. That's when there's blood, and the blood is going to be extra bright depending on how, like, this is going to be like very fresh looking blood if the inflammation's here, or if it's up here, it's going to be a little bit darker because there's going to be more poop mixed in. There can be a lot of mucus in the stool. Same thing with the microbes. They are inactive, they are dormant during the conflict active phase, and they become activated and help with the cell removal when the conflict gets resolved. Sometimes somebody can poop just pure mucus and blood and like no stool, depending on what's going on. You usually don't see mucus in the stool if the issue is up in the small intestine because it just gets reabsorbed on its way down. If there's like a lot of mucus in the stool, there's probably something going on with the colon or something going on in the rectum. That's why it's very hard to just do a diagnosis based off of symptoms, because the small intestine and the large intestine produce a lot of the same symptoms. But to do all these diagnoses in the colon, usually what they do is a colonoscopy, where they just stick a camera up there and they look and see what's going on, and they do biopsies. There's another condition called microscopic colitis, and that's when somebody's having symptoms, but they look up there and they don't see anything. But then when they do a biopsy on a microscopic level, they can see there's damage happening to the intestinal walls.
I was up all night, cramping in my bed, sweating. The night was worse because I go to sleep for an hour, wake up, go to the bathroom, go to sleep for another 30 minutes, wake up, bleed. And it was just a mess. I just couldn't work. I quit my job. I just couldn't move really out of the house. I couldn't barely walk. So my wife's like, man, we need to go to the ER. And we just started looking on YouTube, first about diets. And then I just happened to come across Heal Your Gut Guy. He just came up, man. I literally started watching probably 4 or 5 of your videos. And I was like, man, I think there's really something to this. Within 2 weeks, not even out of the hospital, I just had solid stools. From April 1st to May 1st, I went from like 120 to about 148, 150, about almost 30 actually. So
that's crazy. Wow. So this person was going about 30 times a day, couldn't leave the house, and within 2 weeks they were eating whatever they wanted. It took about 2 or 3 months to get to the second picture right here. One thing that I did with this protocol is I made it repeatable and super flexible. Like, you don't have to do it religiously for 13 days straight. It could take you 20 or a whole month to do one cycle, but he also made it repeatable. For people who it's only been like a few years that they've been having gut issues, one go around should do quite a bit. But if you're somebody like me, who they've had digestive issues since they were kids, it might take 2 or 3 or maybe even 4 goes at doing this to pull up all of those hidden traumatic memories that keep putting our gut in and out of overdrive. So somebody will get diagnosed with IBS when they look through somebody's digestive system through all these means and they don't see anything, they can't find anything wrong, and the person's still having symptoms and they just go, I don't know, you have IBS, just to give them a diagnosis. I think the majority of IBS symptoms are coming from either the intestinal muscles, so all of this, they're lined with muscles that push, they slowly push the stool, the food, from start to finish, from mouth to butt. There's muscles slowly pushing the food along.
Used to have IBS, I would be going to the bathroom 7 to 10 times a day, liquid stool. And now I eat whatever I want with no symptoms. And each day, 2 to 3 times a day, I go to the restroom with regular stool.
So if somebody has IBS, usually something's going on with their gallbladder, especially if they have diarrhea. If it's IBS-C, they're trying to hold on to something, but can't. So there's a term called bile acid malabsorption, which is a crap term if you ask me, but it involves like the pancreas and the gallbladder. So they're all, the pancreas, the gallbladder, and the lesser curvature of the stomach, they're all controlled from this relay right here, and I think it's because they're all like really close to one another. And the conflict is a territorial anger, usually stemming from childhood trauma. And for females, it's either territorial anger or an identity conflict. I don't know what territory I belong to. So when you experience a PTSD trigger, essentially, let's pretend this is the gallbladder. It squeezes out all the bile and it gets dumped into your small intestine, and it's very irritating. It burns when it comes out, feels like hot lava coming out. So it hits your small intestine, and your brain's like, oh my God, we gotta get this out of here. And it pushes it out as fast as possible. Within seconds, your colon can go from being 1 meter long to half a meter long. All your brain has to do is send a signal, and we just, like, I'm sure it can contract better than this. Look, it's only 1 foot long. Now it's 3 feet long. In seconds, it can shorten the speed, shorten the length that the poop has to travel to get out of you. And then it's just pushing to get it out of you as fast as possible. And that's caused by a PTSD trigger from this territorial anger, putting your gallbladder into overdrive and just dumping all that bile in your small intestines. And go, we got to get this out of here. The majority of my symptoms were coming from this. And the best way to know that if you have this or not, I feel a little bit of pressure right here. It never really hurts, and at worst it gets uncomfortable. But I would always have these super stinky, green, yellowy, sometimes foamy, come out like hot fire poops. And to give you an example of one of mine is, this would happen to me like every single time I went into the grocery store. And I'd be like, look, I'm not angry. I want to be in this grocery store. Like, what's going on? And then I realized, like, it just came to me. Like, doing these exercises help your brain make these connections. And I remember just one day it happened and I was like, oh, I'm in the candy aisle. I remember when I was young, like, my mom wouldn't let me buy candy. And a lot of the times it would happen at the checkout counter. And at the checkout counter, they got all this candy, and your mom's like, you can't have this, you can't have that. And as a kid, I'm like screaming, I'm crying, I'm going crazy. So every time I went to the checkout counter, or I went through, I was probably freaking out at every part of the grocery store at some point in time. It was just like going to the grocery store was this subconscious reminder of this territorial anger conflict of my mom not buying me what I wanted in the grocery store. Yes, I was a brat, but that's just how the cookie crumbles. So for the longest time, I thought infection was causing my symptoms. But when I started to really get down the terrain theory rabbit hole, I came across something called the somatid cycle. And this one doctor named Gaston Nassens, I think he was French, He developed this special microscope that could see different aspects of cell life. People think like looking under a microscope is like super straightforward. Every time I use a microscope, I'm like, I have no idea what's going on. But essentially what he discovered is that bacteria can form into mycobacteria. So like a normal healthy bacteria can form into a mycobacteria tuberculosis, and then that can shift into a yeast, candida, and then it can shift into, that yeast can shift into the candida form and shift into cancer cells and whatnot. So he was essentially what he was saying is that he could see our cells shift back and forth from turning into cancer cells or turning into bacteria or turning into candida or E. coli or tuberculosis, literally like all over the place. And here's his special microscope. So another person was on the carnivore diet for a long time because they thought candida, they thought the sugars in the foods were feeding the bad bacteria. And I was meeting with him and I was like, dude, how could you possibly think that? You got a kombucha in your hand, which was made with sugar, and it fed the good bacteria, the so-called good bacteria in this kombucha. You're having sugar right now. And the only reason you're not reacting to it is because on a subconscious level, you believe it's safe, even though it's stupid. There's no lot. You're a guy. You're much smarter than me. And I saw the light bulb go off in his head. I saw him have the realization, like, ugh, you're right. And then we kept talking, and we found the original conflict. And literally the next day, he was eating whatever he wanted without symptoms. Even candy full of sugar that's supposedly supposed to feed only bad bacteria and fungi, even though the people telling you that are sipping on a kombucha, which is filled with normal sugar, both bad and good bacteria and fungi eat good and bad sugar. Our brains are somehow telling our cells to produce this bacteria and fungi and that bacteria and fungi, depending on the state of the conflict. We evolved with bacteria and fungi. We are more bacteria and fungi than we are normal human cells. They are our helpers. So I bought Candida for $20 from like an online store, and I tested different essential oils to see what killed Candida faster while I grew it on bread. And it turns out just 1 drop of oregano essential oil and the Candida will not grow at all. So I made this special procedure where I just pounded the person with tons of different probiotics to make something stick, and I would just give them like 1 drop of oregano essential oil like 3 times a day. And I knew factually that no bad bacteria and fungi could grow with oregano oil essential oil. And I would just smother this person with only good bacteria and fungi, and they would still have symptoms. And still a few months later, they would have a messed up gut microbiome. Your gut microbiome is controlled by your brain, and this is actually confirmed that just stressing rats out will change their gut microbiome. This is a person who was about to spend like $3,000 on this whole crazy probiotic routine. Instead, he invested in my program, and he did it like literally in a fraction of the cost and double the benefits. So one of my conflict shocks was my parents like hiding my video games and not allowing me to play video games, turning my video games off in the middle of a record run. And in this video right here, this kid's playing on his laptop. He's supposed to be washing the dishes, and his mom like just comes up and takes the laptop out of his hands and like smashes it in front of him, and he runs in the house screaming and crying. Let's pretend this kid has like colitis or something. This is the traumatic event that put his gut into overdrive. Now, what are some of the potential PTSD triggers or tracks that this person could encounter? Things enter our brain through the 5 senses. Maybe he could hear a woman yelling at him, and every time a woman yells at him, he gets symptoms. Maybe every time he walks through the front door, he gets symptoms. I've seen that before, where the conflict happened on the front porch of the house, and if he walked out the back door, he didn't get symptoms, but if he walked out the front door, he would get symptoms. And it was never coming into the house he got symptoms. It was only coming out of the house he got symptoms. That's how ridiculous these tracks can be, these subconscious reminders could be. Maybe the next door neighbor was cutting grass, and the smell of fresh cut grass always makes him have to go to the bathroom. Maybe every time he needs to wash the dishes, or he does wash the dishes, he feels the dishes, he gets diarrhea. Or maybe he was eating a sandwich, or he was supposed to eat a sandwich or something like that when the laptop was smashed. So his brain registers gluten or sandwiches. Maybe he doesn't register gluten as dangerous. Maybe it's just sandwiches that are dangerous, and maybe pasta is okay. That's how this works. I agree with you. I think it is dumb, but it is the dumb design that we're stuck with. And the way that we break these is just by, like 90% of the time, is just by making the realization on how it's connected to the original conflict. And you see this in movies all the time. In Iron Man 3, Tony Stark, who's Iron Man, has PTSD. He's like freaking out like all the time. And it's every time he gets reminded of the time at the end of Avengers 1 where he throws the atomic bomb through the wormhole to blow up the spaceship, and he falls back down to Earth and he almost dies. The Hulk catches him to saves him. That's a traumatic moment, and Tony Stark's cool. He plays it off cool. I think he's like cracking jokes the second he wakes back up, but he thought he was dead, and the subconscious mind thought he was dead. So anytime he sees a subconscious reminder of that, his nervous system freaks out and he gets panic attack symptoms. We are experiencing the same things, but instead of having panic attacks, we poop our pants. So sometimes you'll hear me saying things like Crohn's and colitis are just PTSD of the butthole. Probably the best movie that shows how PTSD triggers work is Shutter Island with Leonardo DiCaprio. It's such a brilliant movie because the first time you watch it, you don't know if Leonardo DiCaprio's character is actually crazy and that the insane asylum is like trying to help him or frame him. That no, he actually is a cop and they are trying to trap him and do crazy experiments on him, or if he is a patient and they're trying, you don't know. For the first 3 times I watched it, I didn't know. So the main character experienced many traumatic events. He was in World War II and saw all sorts of horrible things. He was a cop and saw all sorts of horrible things, which he was suppressing by drinking. But his wife was like manic depressive, and one day he comes back and she has drowned all of the children. And before that, she had burnt their house down in the city and they moved to this new house to make things better. But one day he comes home and all of his kids are drowned. And I mean, imagine what that does to your brain. And so throughout this movie, every time his character sees water, like he's on the boat and he's just super sick because the traumatic thing that happened to him was in the water. He was like picking his kids, his dead kids out of the water. Super traumatic. And now the brain's like every time they see water, like, water's bad. Even though we're 80% water, water's bad. And then every time he sees fire, through firing the gun or lighting up a cigarette, every time there's fire involved in a scene, he starts to hallucinate and see crazy things. And it's so cool how the movie and the director and the editors pick up on this, but the psychiatrists in the movie aren't aware that these PTSD triggers are causing the majority of his symptoms. So it's a great movie, but essentially every time you encounter these PTSD triggers, you're gonna get symptoms. And a lot of the times just becoming consciously aware of them will stop the symptoms. So I've kind of breaking down getting better into 4 steps. It's understand how your gut and your mind work, to stop blaming foods, to find the conflict shock and the PTSD triggers, and most of the work is in 3. A lot of people are like, I can't remember, nothing happened. Most of the work is in 3. Finding the traumatic event and finding the PTSD triggers. And that is what my program helps you do. 4, many of the times people don't really have to do much for resolving the conflict. 10 to 20% of the times where like people, at least for gut issues, have to take like great measures to resolve their conflict and change their life and stuff like that. So inside my program, there is a bunch of educational videos that go into more detail on what the mind and what your body is doing. There's quizzes to help reinforce some of the important takeaways we're gonna need. And then the 13-day workbook, which is a PDF that you print off and you start writing on and doing your exercises with. And there's also a section where I'm doing each day with you. There's 13 videos for each of the 13 days where I'm doing the exercises with you to give you good examples so you know exactly what to do. Now, if I were to do this with somebody, it would cost somewhere around $5,000. Like I can literally only do this 2 or 3 times a day before my brain is completely fried, and then I wouldn't have any energy to make videos for you guys. Now the program by itself is $1,000, but I have a crazy deal for you at the end of this webinar.
a mountain of blood. The whole colon. It wasn't just ulcerative colitis. It was pancolitis. If this flare does not stop, they were begging me to cut out my colon. Literally, they were saying, yeah, I've made colonoscopy. I had my colonoscopy a month ago and the colon is clear.
I've had many people who were like literally days away from having surgery, but instead they did my program and like literally all their symptoms were gone in a few weeks. And some of these surgeries, even with copay, are thousands of dollars. And those bags that you have to wear when they cut out your colon, like those cost at least, to buy all those bags throughout the year and all the equipment and all that, it's like thousands of dollars a year after the thousands of dollars surgery. So there are some people who have both diarrhea and constipation. So what's the biological purpose of diarrhea? It's to get rid of crap, to get rid of waste as fast as possible. It's poisonous. We need to get rid of it now. And it's usually angry. We need to get rid of it. Fight, flight, or freeze. Constipation is what's something important to my survival I want to hold on to, but I can't. I'm fearful, sad, and depressed about it. Diarrhea, I want to get rid of this crap and I want to get rid of it now. And so in this experiment, these people were talking to this one woman, talking about the same thing. Her stepdaughters in this horrible situation where she married and her stepdaughters were just awful. And she's talking about them for a second and she's crying about how awful they are. And on the machines, her intestinal muscles just stop moving. And then later on, she gets angry and she's like, yeah, they're such jerks. I hate them. I'm going to punch them in their face. And the intestinal muscles start moving rapidly and she gets diarrhea. Based on her current perception of the conflict, her intestinal muscles change function accordingly. Now, when the stools come out super dry, the kidney collecting tubules are involved and these hold on to water. So it's like telling the body to hold on to water and it's just sucking all the water out of the colon, out of the stool. Now, let's just, for a quick recap, let's go over all the diarrhea. If it's like normal brown diarrhea, it could be caused by inflammation in the small intestine or large intestine. If somebody has this crazy diarrhea that's like neon green and yellow and bily and it burns when it comes out, this is the gallbladder from the territorial anger dumping the bile into the intestines, and it's got to get rid of it as fast as possible. If someone has a black stool, this could be just because you ate something black. I heard Guinness beer does this, iron supplements, activated charcoal can do this. But if it's like a dark purple, it could be from bleeding in the small intestine, sometimes even in the stomach if it's like black. Somebody has a white poop if their liver isn't making enough bile. Somebody will have a skinny poop if somewhere near here, because poop starts to form right here, maybe this flat growth, they're all super inflamed at the moment and it narrows the intestines. Maybe there's a growth like this that narrows the intestines. Something like that's going on. If it happens every once in a while, it's fine, but if it's happening like all the time, then something's going on there. If somebody has a formed poop and there's like mucus or blood on it, then there's something going on near the rectum and it's like scraping near a wound and the poop gets coated with mucus or it gets coated with a streak of blood. It's scraping up against an ulcer, it's scraping up against a perianal fistula opening or a fissure or a hemorrhoid of some sorts. And if something is going on near the rectum or the sigmoid colon, they could just poop pure mucus. So bloating is caused by the intestinal muscles. The only thing that can really cause this phenomenon is the intestinal muscles, because one, it can expand, which will take up more room in your gut and you're like this. And another thing that can happen is that it can clamp down really hard somewhere, which traps gas, and the gas starts to balloon up and take up more room. And that gas won't be released into a fart until that muscle lets go. So that person is trying to hold on to, I want to absorb this, but I can't. I've literally seen this in real time where somebody is very bloated and constipated because they can't hold on to money, and you like literally hand that person like $500 and they start farting. I've seen other people where they're like, oh, I love him so much. I want to digest every little bit of value out of this guy. And then they find out about something really crappy, dirty this person did. Oh, he slept with my sister? What a jerk. I never want to talk to him again. And within seconds, they have diarrhea.
One of my doctors told me, "Hey, so I remember you. You came in here last year telling me you had a bleeding and you had like ulcerative colitis and stuff. How are you about that?" And I was like, "Oh, it's gone." I used to have a lot of issues, a lot of emotional issues. Those issues, I mean, those physical issues, were the reflection of my being. I wasn't feeling supported, back pain. I wasn't performing that well, knee pain, blood on my stools, some conflict with my family, some fights and stuff. It's the way I perceive things. It's definitely not food because I'm eating a lot of gluten and I used to restrict gluten.
This is another person that had really bad constipation, about 2 bowel movements per week, and or sometimes even 1. And it was caught, like he was in very hard financial troubles, invested thousands of dollars into a property, and didn't get any of his money back. And it was with family members, so it made it extremely stressful. And he had a family to support as well. So what's going on when someone has unexpected weight gain or moon face? So right here, this guy's, I think his name's Dynamo. He's a magician that got diagnosed with Crohn's or colitis. And when he got the diagnosis, like he just gained a ton of weight. And it's caused by an existence and abandonment of refugee conflict. And many of the times it happens after a bad diagnosis. Hey, you have colitis, we're gonna have to start cutting things out. It's not looking good, there's no cure, you're gonna have to be on expensive drugs for the rest of your, how much are those drugs? I don't know, like $5,000 a treatment. When you have an expert in a white coat telling you that, it literally is like a lightning bolt to their brain. They really need to be sensitive on how they deliver this information because it can really do a number on that person's brain. Some of the symptoms is that, so the body's essentially holding on to water. After air, water is like the number 2 most important resource in the body. So the person will be very thirsty, like they just drink uncontrollably. I've seen dogs have this and they sit at the bowl and they just drink. And it's usually when you go traveling with them and they'll just gain tons of weight, really water weight, run a lot really fast. They won't urinate, they won't pee, or when they do pee, they pee very little, and the stools will be very dry. And then when the conflict gets resolved, this person might get urinary tract infections, kidney infections. They'll pee a lot, and their pee will be very cloudy. And this is controlled from, I guess you could say, the top of the brainstem up here. Hemorrhoids and fissures are controlled from this part of the brain. For a male, it could be a territorial anger or an identity conflict, and for a female, it's usually an identity conflict. In the conflict active phase, it is cell loss, and so you have these ulcers on the rectum that aren't getting inflamed. It's a weird sight. Hey, there's a big gaping hole when it's not inflamed. What's going on? And it will be like a burning pain. And then when the conflict gets resolved, that's when the cell restoration kicks in and creates hemorrhoids. It can also be itchy, and your stool could look like, have streaks of mucus in it or have streaks of blood in it. And a lot of the times you can just look down and you'll see the hemorrhoid hanging out. But usually the hemorrhoids form after years of this back and forth, and this is normally like childhood trauma, conflict shock that gets reactivated later in life. I've seen this happen to a guy when his wife left and he took the kids, and his hemorrhoids didn't start until she came back, and then they kept fighting every few weeks, and that's when his hemorrhoids would flare. And when you have these conditions, I would invest in a bidet. They literally cost like $20 because wiping with toilet paper is like literally like dragging sandpaper on an open wound. It's not fun. So I would clean yourself and then moisturize your hemorrhoid or your fissure with coconut oil or olive oil or something like that, and really take care of that area and make sure it's clean. And the bidet is the best way to do it, and they're literally like $20. Perianal abscesses and fistulas are controlled from this part of the brain up here. I'm probably pointing the wrong area, but it's up here. And this is not being able to get rid of crap fast enough. Mine developed after high school and after college. They came back and stayed for years and years and years. It's cell loss in the conflict active phase, and then when the conflict gets resolved, it hits on the perianal ducts. When the cell restoration happens, all the mucus in the bad blood doesn't have anywhere to go, So it creates this abscess, and then the abscess doesn't have anywhere to go, and it bursts, and then it creates this fistula that either goes out to your butt cheek or into the vagina, or who knows where it's going to go, or hopefully to the rectum. I had one guy get this when he started a business, and it was just, he had to deal with so much just crap every day. A fistula will not heal on its own. After about 6 months, the scar tissue makes the tract permanent. The best way to deal with this is to get it either lasered shut. I got it lasered shut and it came back, or you do this Ayurvedic treatment called the Koshar Sutra thread. It's a very cool procedure. It takes a while and it's a pain in the butt, but since I've done that, I did it 2 or 3 years ago and it hasn't come back. It's a great way to do it. If somebody has bone pain, arthritis, or fatigue can be during the conflict resolution, like when the conflict gets resolved and the body's getting rid of these extra cells. It just takes a lot of energy from the body. But when someone has extreme fatigue because of anemia, it's from the bones, because anemia is when there's not enough red blood cells in the blood to hold on to the iron. You know, you could take iron all day long, but it doesn't have anywhere to go because it's not in the red blood cells. When the bones and the bone marrow get put into overdrive, they aren't making red blood cells. And when you don't have red blood cells, there's a lot less energy going around the body. Bone pain, arthritis, and anemia is caused by a self-evaluation conflict. I'm not good enough to do something. This was somebody who had very low red blood cell levels, and within 2 weeks it was in a normal range. Acne is caused by feeling attacked or feeling unclean. I don't know what conflict was causing my acne. Kind of just as I started to do my protocol, my acne just stopped showing up. And I had acne all the way up until my late 20s. And they did not start to go away until I started taking this type of approach to my health. Eczema and psoriasis and brain fog is caused by a separation conflict, either wanting to separate or not wanting to separate from something. So you'll see kids will sometimes getting it on their hands because they like want to hold their parents' hands and they're like ripped away from their parents. Think about a kid that like gets left at daycare and they're like, no, mommy, no, oh. And the subconscious just decided to put the hand in over, they didn't want to separate. Or let's say someone's in an abusive relationship and they like grab the person right here and they're like, maybe they'll get a rash right here. Sometimes babies will get it on their ankles or on their butt because they don't like having their butt wiped or whatever and their ankles held up while they're getting cleaned. Sometimes you'll see babies get it on their face because they don't want to be separated from mom's teat, from mom's boob.
It went away after our first session, like literally that week.
Oh, wow. Wow. This person was about to give up on taking the GNM and the trauma approach, and then they got into my program and they realized that she had a lot of trauma growing up because her mom had really bad eczema growing up, to the extent where she had eczema so bad like she couldn't turn, like her skin would crack and start bleeding and stuff. So anytime she saw any bit of a little rash form on her, she would freak out, which just sounds, oh, it's just a little rash. Why are you freaking out? Because as a young, vulnerable kid, she saw the superhero of her life have this horrible eczema, and she thought it was going to happen to her. But when she understood what her body actually does and how all this stupid stuff in our body happens, she was able to relax about it. If I remember correctly, I think she wanted to get married to her boyfriend, and he was like dragging his feet on it. So in the thyroid community, they have you chasing your tail, like, oh, you got to check your adrenals. You didn't eat enough Brazil nuts. That's why you have thyroid issues. I'm like, look, I've never had a Brazil nut in my whole entire life, and my thyroid's fine. What are you talking about? So it could either be the thyroid ducts, which is a powerless conflict or a frontal fear conflict, or it can be the right or the left thyroid gland. And if it's on the right, I wasn't fast enough, and they'll, like, when they scan the thyroid, oh, this side has nodules and this one doesn't. depending on which side has nodules. If it's on the right, I wasn't fast enough to get something important. If it's on the left, I wasn't fast enough to get rid of something bad. One of my ex-girlfriends, she had really bad thyroid issues, and she'd be like tired all day long, like barely able to get out of bed. And then it's, hey, do you want to go to the grocery store? And it's just like, she just get this burst of energy out of nowhere. Like, oh, let's go, let's go, let's go. And we would get to the grocery store, and I'm just trying to relax and browse around, and she's like throwing stuff into the cart and like Speedy Gonzales like all around the place. And then the second she gets to the checkout counter, like I'd have to catch her from fainting. Like no joke. I think when she was a kid, for her the conflict shock was when she was a kid during Soviet times. If you didn't get to the market fast enough, you weren't going to get strawberries that day, or you weren't going to get bacon that day, or something like that. It was going to be all sold out, and then you couldn't make birthday cake for grandma or something. I think there was one situation where her mom was like, "You didn't get the berries, you ruined grandma's birthday." But just having that realization, it doesn't happen anymore. Awesome thing about GNM is it gives a great explanation for every condition, even psychiatric conditions. I know a lot of people, a lot of guys are concerned about low testosterone. If somebody has a conflict that impacts the right temporal lobe, that lowers testosterone production in the body, and you can have low testosterone. And if anybody has a conflict on this side of the brain, they will also be depressed. And depression and these wild thoughts can be very scary if you don't understand where they're coming from. Oh, it's from a conflict? Okay, fix the conflict and the depression will lift. That might sound insensitive, but that's how it is. Things like histamine things like histamine intolerance and leaky gut are terms that have been created in the past couple of decades that are completely incorrect and don't accurately show what's really going on in the body. It's kind of like, oh, undigested food enters my bloodstream and then I randomly react. It's like, you're not randomly reacting. So if I have a rash on my right arm and I have leaky gut, why does the rash only, if it's random, if those toxins are random and they're hitting like random parts of the body, why do I only get a rash here and not everywhere else? If I have histamine intolerance, why is the histamine only building up on my right arm and not my left or anywhere else in the body? It all starts after conflict shocks. And depending on how you subconsciously perceive that traumatic event, it decides what organ gets put into overdrive. And that's all histamine intolerance and leaky gut is. It's you have these runaway PTSD triggers or conflicts in your life.
Proctitis, it went to ulcerative colitis and pain the whole colon. I was diagnosed with histamine intolerance, so I couldn't eat anything. I'm just poop blood every single day. I had it was so bad. I weighed like 35 kilograms, but I'm pretty happy right now where I am. I just want to thank you, like I said.
So this is Corey George right here. He is the CEO and founder of Yesa, and he's also president of Grant Cardone Canada. So he's a very successful entrepreneur, business owner. He has millions of dollars at his disposal. He was doing stem cells, which actually helped him quite a bit, but he was still, like, he looked like this, even after stem cells. And you could do everything right. You could have all the money in the world, but if you are not addressing the root cause of the problem, for him it was like, very good at business, but it was like this subconscious PTSDs from a bad business deal that he had already learned from like years ago that kept constantly putting his colon in and out of overdrive and just doing a ton of damage to his body. And when he started to get that under control with the help of my program, I think he had therapists and other things trying to help him get the stress under control under his life. But when he started looking at it from the correct way, I mean, look at it. He looks like $1 million. Excuse me, he looks like more than $1 million. So the cause is a traumatic event. Then the cure is altering the conscious and subconscious memory of that traumatic event. And you can't do that unless you know what the traumatic event was. The work of Dr. Hammer and GNM is just amazing. One thing that I hear a lot of people say is, yeah, GNM's great, but how do I resolve my conflict? How do I neutralize my PTSD triggers? And I've obsessed about this. My girlfriend, she's also speaks many other languages and There's just not a lot of information on what specifically you need to do, or even what Dr. Hammer did to resolve conflicts and neutralize tracks and PTSD triggers in people's lives. There just isn't any information. I wish there was more information. Maybe it is out there, but if I'm having a hard trouble finding it, it means it's not very accessible. Truth. Even before Dr. Hammer's work, even normal doctors and psychiatrists struggled to find the conflict shock that started their health issues. And that is why I created this 13-day protocol to make it as easy as possible and to keep you on track. More than half of the therapy or cure to your autoimmune and gut issues is just finding the traumatic memory. You literally can't do anything unless you find it. In the few case studies of Dr. Hammer that I have read, it seems like he spends like hours with the person trying to find what it is. How do you find a conflict shock? So the way that I do it is I get out a Word doc that you can see on the right here, and I literally I start with, okay, when did your symptoms start? And usually the person's like, oh, I don't know. What year did it start? Was it in the winter? Was it in the spring? The brain is lazy. It is trying to conserve energy. It will not do something unless it sees great value in it. A lot of motivating people to do this is fully convincing them that it's caused by stress so that their brain has the motivation to dig through these old memories. Because the cure is in digging through these old memories. When was the first time you went to the hospital? When were your symptoms really bad? The first date that we need to get is, when did you first have symptoms? And that was probably when the conflict got resolved. So, all right. So winter 2020, you had to go to the hospital. What was stressing you out before that? Boyfriend was stressing me out. Oh, we found the conflict. Boyfriend drama was causing my symptoms. Not so fast. What was the conflict shock? Was it when you went through his phone and you found out that he was texting your best friend? Was that the conflict shock? Was it the conflict shock where he just texted you one day and said, hey, we're breaking up? Was it when you were walking out one day without him and you saw him having a coffee with somebody else? What was the specific moment that put your gut into overdrive? That is the first mistake that I see a lot of people make. Because in that shocking moment is where the PTSD triggers are formed. When I'm meeting with somebody, the only way you can find PTSD triggers is to live your life and to write them down. Like literally take a piece of paper or use your phone and you just write, I had diarrhea and I was on my computer. And then later that day, I had diarrhea and I have diarrhea 20 times a day. Every time you have diarrhea, something triggered it. And you might notice it's every time you walk through your front door. And that day you did lawn work and you had to walk through your front door 50 times instead of 10 times. And he's like, wow, only on days where I have to do a lot of yard work, I get a lot of diarrhea. So we got to do like this detective CSI work and try to figure out what we start with. In GNM, we start with the symptoms. Until Elon Musk makes that chip better, we don't have a way to see what our subconscious mind is worried about. The only way we can do that is with our symptoms. So after you have a big list of 50 things that are causing your symptoms, and in my program, like every single day, I'm like, write down exactly what you're doing when you get symptoms, because those are hints and clues to what your conflict shock would be. And it's crazy. I'll have somebody say, oh, yeah, the traumatic event was when I went through his phone and I found out he was texting my sister. And then on the second or third meeting with this person, they'll be like, oh my God. So before that happened, something else huge happened. I caught him pinching my best friend's butt before I caught him texting my sister. And the subconscious mind just suppressed huge things every single time. And usually when these people have these big aha moments and it gets released out of the subconscious mind, it's like their symptoms get cut in half overnight. And you just do that just by simply going through old emails and I go through old childhood videos sometimes and old photographs and go on the camera roll of my iPhone or something like that. But writing down your PTSD triggers is huge. And I know it might not feel like you're doing anything like finding, like, oh, I need to resolve the conflict. I need to resolve the conflict. I need to be James Bond and be so good with girls that I never get stressed out about girls. That could happen and you could still have symptoms because you still have the subconscious PTSD triggers putting your gut in and out of overdrive even though you are zero stressed out about girls and you have 5 girlfriends. And even when they yell at you for dating other girls, you're stoic and I don't feel anything. Don't care. I have 4 other girlfriends. You could still get symptoms even though you have no emotional reaction, you don't care, because we haven't, I don't know why it's like this. It just is. It's stupid. I agree with you. But finding the traumatic event and seeing its connection with the PTSD trigger, it's literally the cure. It's literally the therapy. And that there's many different ways you can do that, but I've really structured it in a way and in my program to help you have these realizations as fast as possible. It's very easy to get distracted and start doing other things, but this program for 13 days is like, hey, where is it? And on your mind the whole time is like, I don't want to look at my old trauma. I don't want to waste calories on this. So I have a lot of people ask, what if I can't find the trauma? And I just keep telling people, keep looking, keep looking. Oh, my symptoms started in college and nothing stressful happened. Like literally had somebody tell me this for a whole freaking year. And then one day the floodgates opened. Oh, my best friend left me. Oh, this boy I really liked cheated on me. Oh, I was living with a grandmother who was super sick and just horrible. My mom was yelling at me. We didn't have any money. My dad was overseas working. I never got to see, a bunch of girls beat me up, like all in college when the symptoms started. Oh, my symptoms started when I started working this job, or they started during high school. I don't really remember anything stressful happening to me, even though if you talk to that person in a normal conversation, it's always like, oh, that job was awful. Well, okay, most of your symptoms started during that job. What was so stressful? Did your boss yell at you? Did a client yell at you? Did you mess up a project? What happened? You're like, oh, nothing. But if you keep picking at, like something happened, the brain is trying to avoid it. The brain is trying to conserve energies. So if you can't find the trauma, that is to be expected. Keep digging. My program helps loosen the soil and make that digging a lot easier. What if the conflict is impossible to resolve? So again, many times just finding the conflict and finding the PTSD triggers will resolve a lot of the symptoms, especially with autoimmune conditions. Different depending on the condition, but mostly with autoimmune conditions, just finding greatly reduces the symptoms. With this knowledge that I'm trying to give you, there are things we can do to have these things sting a little bit less and cause our organs to react less. What about kids and infants? Kids can't have trauma. When was the last time you cried like a baby? When was the last time you cried like a little kid? Kids and babies are absolutely helpless. If they are left alone in the wild, they are as good as dead. Seriously. We have this biological program, like a kid that's left in their crib all alone at night. If that were to happen in the wild, they would be dead. They would be dead. So biologically, the way we're set up today to take care of children, it's very easy for them to suffer these conflict shocks. And these conflict shocks can even happen in the womb as well. Or going to the doctor and getting shots, or going to the dentist, being left at school. Even if I didn't get the video game I wanted, or if I even lost in a video game, this is me right here. Last time I reacted like this to something was like when I was 7. So people and kids just tend to have more emotional reactions to things because they're more helpless towards the conflict, whether they want to admit it or not. So when I was getting better, I would just track my PTSD triggers in like a draft email or Apple Notes or some note-taking program. It's very easy to misplace a sheet of paper. I would also work to reduce stress in your life. I just see people, they just go out of their way to make their life stressful. They're like, oh, I'm gonna go take a $1,000 raise at this company and I'm gonna just double my workload and double my commute time for literally $1,000 more a year. Why? Take the job closer to home. Take the easier job. Just ruthlessly rip out the things in your life that are not serving you. Let's design our lives to be easier. I see a lot of people, they don't put any intention on making their life easy. And it seems like they just go out of their way to make their life hard. And the more stretched thin you are, the easier it is for your subconscious to experience another conflict shock, which won't be fun. Will a psychologist help? Yes, no, maybe. If you've been seeing a mental health professional for years and you're still having autoimmune issues, then history tells us like they ain't gonna fix it. Knowing GNM and knowing what traumatic events to go after, it's an art and a science and a skill that just takes practice. And modern psychology, I'm sure there's some psychologists that are better than others and stuff like that, and hypnotists that are better than others, but someone really needs a strong understanding of GNM and just lots of experience in order to really get these things under control. It's just not common knowledge today. So I would say no, because they're not trained to look for the conflict shock that put your gut into overdrive, and they're not trained to encourage you to look for PTSD triggers. You might have 3 things stressing you out in life, like your car's about to die, work's really bad, and things are on the rock with your partner. Chances are only one of those 3 things is putting your gut in and out of overdrive. So you could spend all your time working on like every stressful conflict in your life, but in reality, only one is going to be stopping your symptoms. That's just a skill psychiatrists have just never been trained to have. When I was getting better, the first 2 years I was working with doctors. I had lots of big hospitals around. I saw over 10 GI doctors. They literally all said the same thing. All we can do is put you on drugs. Nobody cared whatsoever about the root cause. After a year of trying different pills, because I really wanted to avoid going on the biologics, I finally caved and I was like, all right, fine, I'll do it. And I remember that first day walking into that room and just everybody looking abysmal. Like everyone looked sick. The nurse who was taking care of me was overweight. She reeked of smoke. She just got out of her smoke break and she was handing candy to people who were like sitting down there. And I sat down, I'm like, why am I taking advice from sick people? When I started to do some more research, this is very recent, 2022, biologic therapies have greatly advanced the medical care of patients with Crohn's disease. However, up to 50% have no response, and 80% fail to achieve. In what world is that success? Could raise your standards just a little bit higher. If you had this success rate in any other profession, you wouldn't have a job. So going the modern medicine route was costing me a ton of money. Just to get diagnosed was thousands of dollars in copay. Those MRIs and colonoscopies were very expensive every time I had to take off work. But even after I was diagnosed, I was going to the doctor maybe once a month or every other month. It would cost about $10 in gas and just wear and tear on my car to get over there. And then the copay to see this specialist was $50. I was on 4 or 5 different medications and they were each $20, maybe $50 a pop. I had to use my sick and vacation days to go get these treatments. I would get to these doctors on time and be stuck in the waiting room for 2 hours and then only get to spend 10, 15 minutes with this person and they wouldn't even give me a good answer. And anytime I had to do a blood test or a stool test, this stuff all added up over the years. A modern medicine easily paid at least $10,000. It cost about $18,000 per year for somebody with Crohn's disease. It costs about 5,000 euros a year in Europe. And if somebody goes to the ER in the United States, it's about $40,000. And these are old numbers, so inflation just multiplied these numbers by 2. Surgery and ER visits are very expensive and they make it sound like it's going to fix everything and make life better. Some surgeries have less side effects than others. Some of these procedures are out of a Frankenstein book and make my skin crawl and make me feel nauseous every time I hear about them. One being the ostomy bag where they remove your colon. You gotta buy 350 bags. It's at least $1,000 a year just for these bags. Here's a lab study that claims that this is a success. You're like, all right, this is gonna work. You start to read how they define success and it says, these people have on average 6 bowel movements per day. How is that success? What motivated me to go the holistic route is my biologic wasn't working and he was like talking about putting me on a different one. But before we do that, let's up the dosage. I already checked with your insurance company. It's going to be covered. I upped the dosage and none of it's covered. And I remember getting this $5,000 bill in the mail. And I was like, I am not paying this. This treatment for the whole year done absolutely nothing for me. And so I started to go the holistic route. And I probably spent way more money on holistic remedies than I did on modern medicine. Right here is a testimonial from a program that's $3,000, and that's before you factor in the $500 a month of supplements you gotta buy. So this person's been doing the program for 2 years, and they go on vacation. Imagine you've been on this program for 2 years, you've been eating this boring bland diet for 2 years, and then you go to Italy and you can't have pizza, you can't have pasta, you make your way over to France, you can't have any croissants or any cake or any French pastries. It's depressing. And the sad part about this, food intolerances are so easy, boring to fix. Before I started on these diets, I could eat normal foods and not have symptoms, but then when I started reading these books and becoming brainwashed and hyper-reactive to these foods, anytime I had bread, I would have to call off work for a day or two and make my coworkers and bosses more mad. I had to become this freak, like literally nobody wanted to be around, because every time I went out to eat with people, I was always like judging people for what they ate, and they could feel it and they didn't want to be around me. And I don't blame them. Nothing worked. I wanted to believe so bad that these holistic remedies were working, but in truth, like, they weren't. And I remember one day, one of my coworkers came up to me and he goes, "Mike, you do all this holistic stuff, but I can still beat you up in a fight. And I invest nothing into my health. I just got done eating a hot dog. You just got done eating cow liver, and you're still, if you turn sideways, I couldn't see you. Something else is going on." I couldn't hear him, but he was right. He was absolutely right. I was missing a ton of work, and even when I was at work, I was in the bathroom, and the pretty girls at work, they didn't want anything to do with me because they're like, I was known as the guy who would stink up the bathroom all day long. It just wasn't fair that all my friends and families and coworkers could go out and have fun, eat whatever they want, and they had no health repercussions. Where if I like literally slipped up just once, just had one piece of bread, just had one cookie, I'd be sick for 2 days. And I was not that way before I started doing the holistic route. I did the holistic stuff for half a decade, and 1 year I was like really disciplined. I was looking really good. I'd been on my boring bland diet for the whole year. Finally saved up enough vacation time to go home for Christmas. There was just tasty food everywhere, gingerbread cookies, candy, all my mom's home cooking. And I said, you know what? My gut can handle this. I've been a good boy all year. I'm not on the naughty list. I should be able to eat these foods and not have an issue. And I ate these foods and I was sicker than a dog, and I looked like an idiot in front of my family. The house was really tiny. Anytime I was on the toilet either vomiting or diarrheaing, everybody heard it. And everybody was like, I thought he was better. The point I'm trying to get across, and what was really causing my issues during that time, were the PTSD triggers behind the scenes, but I was also in a few, like, I guess you could say toxic relationships that I didn't handle very well. It doesn't matter how much money you have or how much willpower you have, if you do not address the root cause of the problem, you are guaranteed pain for the rest of your life. What fun things would you want to spend all that money on? If you could eat anything, like, what would you eat? Take off your holistic horse blinders for a second and look to the right and the left and look at all the other people enjoying their food and living a normal life. That is possible. And Corey, he's a great example of, it doesn't matter how perfectly you did these things or how much money you had, if you did not address the root cause of the problem, you are not ever going to get better. Once he recovered, he doubled his company's revenue just from feeling better. Imagine all of his brain power was going towards what foods to buy and whatnot, and now it could all that brain power could be reinvested in his business so he can make more money and ultimately have more fun. He also did stem cell treatment, and he did expensive health retreats, and he was still struggling with his health until he addressed that it was a traumatic event that happened in a previous business that was still haunting him on a subconscious level. The average person is probably missing out on $25,000 a year in revenue. I was a web developer. All my friends were investing their free time into developing better programming skills, and they were making much more than I was. I was investing all of my spare time into these health things and falling behind the web development curve. Research materials, $1,000 a year at least, just buying random remedies and trying them out, self-test remedies. I did O3 treatment where they pump oxygen into your blood. That was like $2,000, didn't see anything. Buying supplements, reading books. Organic foods were super expensive. I lived in Virginia, so I could drive out to Polyface Farm, buy eggs and all that stuff. But that was time in the car, extra money on gas. Organic food is usually double the price as conventional food. And it's great to eat organic, but I was not getting any better. What really cost a lot of money was going to health seminars. $500 for a ticket if you're lucky, $500 for a hotel room, $500 for the conference itself, $500 for food, $500 buying the things at the booth tables, and I wasn't getting better. Someone can easily drop $20,000, $30,000 in a year trying to figure out what's going on with their health. So right now you are in quicksand. Quicksand's actually very easy to get out if you have the right tools and you know what to do. But one wrong move can send you to the bottom of that pit pretty darn fast. So your ultimate tool for getting better is this 13-day protocol. If there was something else already out on the market, I would not have made this. All of the other gut health programs out there, they focus on strict diets, taking expensive probiotics and taking expensive supplements and detoxing, claiming to be holistic, when what controls your whole body is your brain. This stems from a traumatic event. And what this program does is it stimulates your brain. The questions and the exercises that I have you do, everything is poking your brain to bring up those old traumatic memories, bring them to the surface so it can be released from the subconscious mind so you'll stop having symptoms. I was so tired of playing Russian roulette with every single meal. I mean, don't you want to enjoy food again? Look at that. That looks like so good. My mouth is watering just looking at it. And that's more proof that our brain doesn't know the difference between what's real and what's not real. That's fake food. I know this is fake food. I've looked at this picture more than 100 times. But the primitive part of my brain is getting me ready to eat that. Some tasty gelato or ice cream, whatever that is. But these are the 3 keys to success in almost any field. The first one is you need to know the basics. And so in my program, the first day I'm teaching you the basics of GNM, German New Medicine, or Germanic Healing Knowledge. And that's what Dr. Hammer, that brilliant doctor, discovered. He was the one who found the rings in the brain, and you could look at your brain CT scan and know what was wrong with you. So that's actually going to tell us what your body is actually doing. You have to know these things in order to read your symptoms better, because your symptoms are the hints to the traumatic event that put your gut into overdrive. Like how are you going to speak the English language if you don't know the alphabet? How are you going to speak Russian if you don't know the Russian alphabet? I love GNM classes. This was brought over to us by Germans. I love them, but they are very technical. And by the time you are done learning the basics of GNM, your brain's going to have no energy left to face the conflicts and get rid of the PTSD triggers. I'm really trying to teach it to you in a way that's easy to digest. I'm trying to help you get better as fast as possible with the least amount of energy. The other big basic thing that I teach you is how a traumatized mind works. When I used to work with people, I used to get very frustrated with people. I'd be like, how do you not remember your boyfriend breaking up with you in college? Like, how do you not remember that? And it's pretty common knowledge in the psych community that this stuff gets buried in the subconscious because it's like too painful for the conscious mind to deal with. A traumatized mind does some tricky things. Mentorship and community is really important. This comes with a Facebook group with the other students that are inside the course. I'm a dork and I play this video game and I was like okay at it. Then I joined a group that's like really good and I became like one of the top 20 players in the game just by being in this group because everybody was like really good. So like subconsciously, I was like, oh, I gotta be good at this too. And the other thing you need is a step-by-step plan. When you're going through these gut health courses, they just throw 100 hours of education at you and expect you to put it together by yourself. The brain can only take so much change in a day. And so I've structured this to have each day and each lesson take that into consideration. This person's brain can only tolerate so much change in a day. This is a step-by-step plan. It's so easy to get sidetracked and to focus on this and to focus on that. This keeps you focused on the 20% of tasks you need to do to get 80% of the results. I know exactly what your brain needs to hear in order to get better. I just don't know how many times it needs to hear it or what angle it needs to come from. And that's what I've done in my protocol is I've literally just, oh, this way, that way, this way. And I know eventually these memories are gonna give way and come back to you. You have 2 options right now. I've pretty much laid out the root cause and told you exactly what you need to do to get better. But you can do it the easy way and enroll in my program, or you can do it on your own. I did it on my own just simply because there weren't any other programs out there. Even after discovering G&M, I probably spent at least $20,000, $30,000 in other therapies trying to figure this out. Each year you're sick, at least $5,000, $10,000. And each year you're healthy. It's like compounding interest. Not only are you not wasting money on needless things, but you're investing in yourself, you're investing in your skills so that you can make more money, or at least enjoy the money that does come your way. This was somebody who was on very strict diets for a long time. The first summer after doing this, he was able to travel Europe and have a great carefree time with his girlfriend. And his last girlfriend broke up with him because she couldn't deal with his health conditions. And you can't blame her for that. We're humans trying to survive. We're gonna choose a healthy mate over an unhealthy mate. This person said, "Thank you so much. This Thanksgiving, that's where us Americans celebrate backstabbing the Native Americans for feeding us. You have turkey and mashed potatoes and stuff like that." He said, "I had a full rounded Thanksgiving dinner today, and I had to, without any pain for the first time in 10 years, I had to take a moment to sit back after the meal today and truly soak in what it means to me to be grateful for this group and this program and the ability to overcome this so-called incurable disease." It's repeatable, it's fast, it's literally like fill in the blanks. There's times where I'm at a restaurant and I'm like eating a tasty pizza and I'm like, 4 years ago, I couldn't do this. I couldn't do this. I was literally such a holistic nutbag. It was impossible for me to enjoy food. This will work for beginners if you were just diagnosed, or even if you don't have a diagnosis yet. It works for holistic veterans, people who have tried everything. This is the best gut healing program on the market. It is my goal to make healing the gut as fast as possible with the least amount of effort. This is all I do. This is all I obsess about. There's no one in the space even close. There's other great G&M programs out there, but they're not from a gut health perspective. Imagine going over all the information on like the conflict for your toenail, the conflict for your iris and your eyeball and all this, and for your hair follicles. There's literally not enough space left in your brain to deal with your gut conflicts by the time of that. And the teacher just doesn't have enough energy in the tank left to spend a lot of time on like conflict resolution and neutralizing tracks. It's literally a step-by-step checklist for fixing your gut. A lot of courses claim to be step-by-step. They say that in the title and then they deviate from that very fast. Day by day, step by step. So again, that first section is teaching you the basics of German New Medicine and how a traumatized mind works. This is Caroline Markland. She put together learninggnm.com. She was very kind to teach me the basics. And my girlfriend, she speaks Russian and she's been learning G&M from the Russians. And you'll be surprised at how much Russians, how cold their culture is, how much they're into this stuff. So I learned a lot from her as well. And it's both of our obsessions. It's all we talk about. The second section is about diet, and I'm going to teach you about the diet of Weston A. Price. He was a dentist in the 1930s that wanted to know what caused cavities. And he noticed in his National Geographic magazine that all the people in Africa, in the tribes, they had perfectly straight teeth and no cavities. So he just started visiting them, and he determined that it was caused by the foods that they ate, which isn't 100% true, knowing G&M, but he clearly outlines the most nutritious diet that you can eat. Section 3, I show you how to find the conflict shocks and the PTSD triggers, the tracks, and that's where we spend most of our time, which I know sounds silly, oh, just make a timeline, but this is where most of the benefit is. These exercises and the videos that I have you watch, very subtly, I am telling you things and doing subliminal suggestions to your mind to dig up these old past memories. Your brain no longer feels the need to keep putting your organs in and out of overdrive. And then the fourth section, I have about 3 techniques we can use to really distort these traumatic memories in our head to have it break free from the subconscious. How much does education cost? One school year at a private school is about $35,000 a year, and for a state school, about $10,000. I went to a state school. I probably spent somewhere around $20,000, $30,000 to go to this school, and 90% of the information that I learned in college, I will never ever use. So let's look at the big picture of this, at how much money your gut issues are costing you. In general, like $5,000 a year, and that's a very conservative number. Over 10 years, that's $50,000. They said it costs, like every time you go to the ER, it's $40,000 and you have a great 10% copay or something like that. That could be $10,000. My next door neighbor in California, he was a nurse. He was a nurse. He worked at the hospital. He had he had a panic attack or something, and they rushed him to the ER. He's a nurse, so you think he would get a deal? He got a $10,000 bill. He didn't even spend the night. They did nothing. They just ran some tests. It's outrageous. Over a course of a decade, your gut issues can easily cost you $60,000. You can buy a pretty nice car for that amount, or put a down payment on a house. It's a lot of money. You're literally flushing down the toilet. I thought like this was a lot, and I was talking to somebody about mold toxicity, and they spent $2,000 to meet with a guy that they had to fly to. I was like, have you heard of Zoom? Why didn't you see this person in person? So they had to buy a ticket, $500. They had to get a hotel room, $200. They had to feed themselves, $100, $200. And then they literally met with this person for an hour or two, and it cost like $2,000 or $3,000. And the information didn't help at all. And then I talked to another person that was like really into detoxing, and I think they spent $20,000 or something obnoxious. That didn't include the cost of the supplements they had to do just to detox, which again isn't going to do anything. Nothing. It won't do anything. And if your conflict is centered around money, it's just going to make your symptoms worse. So what I charge to do the program with me is $5,000, and I really only have 10 slots open, because if I do 2 or 3 sessions a day, I am like spent, and I don't have enough energy left over to make free content and stuff like that. And so what you'll get in my program are educational videos on the fundamentals, and each day I'll be like, hey, watch section 1 video that teaches you about the basics of your body. Okay, day 2. Watch section 2 video that teaches you about diet. I'm telling you what, each day I tell you which videos to watch, and each video will have quizzes afterwards to help cement that information. I'm not gonna yell at you if you get every question wrong or anything like that. It's just a quiz to help secure that information in your brain. And then the 13-day protocol. There is just something about having a checklist, a day-by-day, step-by-step checklist that keeps you on track so you never feel lost in the process, because it is very easy to get distracted and focus on the wrong things and not focus on the 20% of tasks that you could do to get 80% of your results. 80-20 rule, Pareto's principle. And then I have a video where each day, it's like day 8. Okay, guys, today on day 8, this is what we're going to do. All right, we're going to do we're going to make our timeline today. And then I like literally do my timeline in front of you and tell you about the conflict that put my gut into overdrive and how I did the timeline and stuff. So I'm like literally doing it with you. It's like I'm holding your non-wiping hand through this process day by day. So if you enroll now, I'll give you 50% off of my program for $500. And I also have a 3-month payment plan for this. But only if you buy now, I'm going to give you some crazy bonuses. So the first bonus is over 100 hours of session recordings. Like it's a session holding nothing back, telling them exactly what they need to do to get better. I'm helping them make their timeline. I'm helping them make sense of the list of the PTSD triggers that they have. You also get to watch Oksana, my girlfriend, do it as well. And she has a ton of training in this stuff. And people say her sessions are more entertaining than mine. There's a lot of drama in her sessions. She's for sure prettier than me. So knowing this information will show you how to treat any disease, or at least treat it with more intelligence when you go to the doctor. You just figure out what organ is in overdrive using this book or learninggnm.com. You literally just plug in the conflict theme into my program and run with it. And it will help you dig up those memories that are putting that organ in and out of overdrive. These are the main conditions that I have specific videos for inside of the program. My third bonus is my Attraction 101 course. If it's not money, the next biggest conflict theme that I see is with the opposite sex. Money can buy everything except for love. In this course, I'm teaching the basics of attraction, of masculinity and femininity. When we are looking for a partner, we are subconsciously attracted to certain things that we are unaware of. And becoming aware of those things when she doesn't call you back or she does this or that, you just take it so less personal and it will greatly reduce your symptoms and also increase your chances of success with the opposite sex. I also have an unpublished book in a PDF format for you guys. I think it's great, but I just haven't gotten around to finishing it. And then I have a Nutrition 101 course. After this nutrition course, you will never have a nutrition question ever again. So let's look at all the value you're getting here for so normally my program with the videos and the worksheet is $1,000. You're gonna get over 100 hours of G&M session recordings, which that can be like, when you're working with somebody, that's either $100, $200 an hour. I don't know why I just put $1,000 there. It's probably worth way more than that. I show you how to treat any condition, but other conditions could cost you $100K over the course of a decade. It's way more value than $5,000. This Attraction 101 course, that could save you a relationship, and a lot of us have invested a lot of money into our relationships. My book, okay, $20, but the information in that is going to be greatly beneficial to you and bring thousands of dollars of value into your life. And then my Nutrition 101 course, you'll never have to take a nutrition course again, but I don't know how some people pay $50K for a nutrition. Some people pay $50K for a nutrition education. I don't know how. I don't know how it's even possible. Easily over $10K in value and just getting quality of life back for just $500. I tried to buy a plane ticket back to America the other day. It was like $700. The other day I took my cousins and brothers and stuff to a movie and bought popcorn and paid for everything. Well over $500. For less than going to a movie or buying a big screen TV, like, you could have your life back. So over a 10-year breakdown, recover lost revenue, at least $20,000 in lost revenue. If you have any sort of upper class or middle class job, it's going to be at least $100K over a decade. Save medical expenses. On average, it was $10K a year, those other places, but I'm rounding down here, being conservative. Like, I've seen people pay for vacations $5,000 and they're sick the whole vacation. You're going to save thousands of dollars on food. I would buy organic food and just wouldn't eat it because it wasn't tasty at all. I've had moms who were too sick to take care of their kids, and so they had to hire a full-time nanny. That's very expensive. I had some people who were working with a mental health professional and not really getting anywhere. That can easily cost a couple $1,000s a year. Like, you're easily spending $100K a decade or losing $100K easily in value, not having your gut health in order. So you can just invest a tiny small amount, cost less than a plane ticket, to literally get your life back, to literally make 1,000 ROI on your investment. Even the most successful business people in the world will say this. There's only a handful of investments you'll make in your life that will pay you back 100, 1,000 times on your investment. And this is one of them. What pleasurable things would you do with that extra money? Would you go to Venice and enjoy the pizza? Maybe you just want to buy the latest gadgets. Maybe you want to buy a nice big TV. Maybe you want a nice gaming setup, but you can't pay for it because all this money is going towards your health stuff. A nice interior, a nice house. Maybe you want a nice purse or a nice dress or some nice shoes. These are all things you can't have because your gut is making it impossible to enjoy them even if you did have them. You are in quicksand right now, and it is easy to get out if you have the right steps. And one wrong move can end you up in the ER, and some bad things can happen in the ER. This is someone after 14 years of flare-ups. It looks like my UC has finally healed. I've been testing to see if it's for real. I've been eating burgers, chocolate, lots of cheese, and chips. I even drank a whole bottle of whiskey one night, and the next day my stool was perfectly formed. I've been hospitalized over 2 times. Both times I lost around 30 pounds. I could put my hands around my thighs. I was so skinny. It feels like I've woken up from a bad dream. I remember watching my life passed me by. Each day I'd hope for things to get better, only for it to stay the same or get worse. I still can't believe I'm able to eat crap and drink like a sailor, yet my bowels are fine. The future looks more rosier. Thank you, Mike, for your 13-day protocol. I've been traveling Europe the past 5 years, and I really don't get much out of seeing the monuments. I get there and I'm like, oh cool, oh, awesome. Where's the closest tasty restaurant? I literally just like going to these places and eating food the whole time. The first few trips to Europe, I couldn't eat anything, and it was absolutely miserable, complete waste of money. So you can enroll now for $500 or 3 payments of $200 over 3 months. So you're never going to see this offer again. This is your last chance to enroll. I have tracking on the website to see who sees this offer. I only want to make this offer available for people who are serious about fixing their gut and ready to take action now. Literally the only way to lose is to not join. Because if you don't join, you're just going to try to figure this out yourself, and you're literally going to waste thousands of dollars trying to figure it out yourself. It cost me thousands of dollars, and this is my full-time job, and I obsess about it. So let's look at this logically. Is it the best place to go results-wise? Yes. All the other places have you spending thousands of dollars on supplements, and you still can't eat your favorite foods. You can eat literally your favorite foods like probably after this free webinar. So it's obnoxious how much better our results are than the other gut health courses out of there. One of the other gut health courses has you eating like bananas for a month. It's insane, the stuff that's out there. It's crazy. Tools wise, this right here is the Swiss Army knife of healing your gut. Sounds a little lame, but no, seriously, this is the best tool for helping you have those aha moments and turning off the subconscious trauma in your brain that keeps putting your gut in and out of overdrive. It's the most cost efficient, and all your risk is covered because I have a 30-day money-back action-based guarantee. If you come back to me and this workbook is filled out and you aren't happy with your progress, I'll give you your money back. Imagine what a pain-free life would look like, where you can actually go out on the weekends, go traveling with your friends. I lost all my friends just because I couldn't eat out with them, because every time I'd go out with them, I'd eat something bad and then I would get sick. I kept canceling on them, and then I eventually just lost all my friends because they knew I was unreliable to hang out with. And I would just look on Instagram and Facebook and just watch all my friends and family like living these fun lives. And anytime I had the energy to go out, I was going to a boring health conference and they were out like living a fun life. It just wasn't fair. My program works with or without drugs. This was somebody who was taking 20 pills a day. They were on biologics. They tried all the different diets. Now they eat whatever they want. They can eat normal food again. I really feel for the people who have psoriasis. Imagine like going on a date and there's already enough anxiety like trying to hold the other person's hand, and imagine you got like this huge rash on your hand and now you're like self-conscious about holding this person's hand. And that probably antagonizes the conflict because you really want to hold this person's hand, but you can't. Then the rash gets worse. Thanks, I healed with your advice. It's hard to believe that I've truly healed from years and years of IBS. I eat whatever I want now. From time to time, I see my old anxiety patterns creep back up on me, but instead of blaming food, I look for the PTSD triggers and the conflict relapses, and my symptoms quickly go away. I've been diagnosed with Crohn's for a few months. Doctors are the worst and propose nothing besides medications. Went on the gut microbiome method, no medication, found relief, but I didn't heal. Until I started GNM in your program, I have complete relief, pain-free the next day. I'm telling you, those realizations are powerful. You are one realization away from stopping your symptoms, or at least cutting them in half. And then the second realization, you cut that in half in half. I like to think of them as like non-invasive brain surgery. I bought the program 2 weeks ago. I am now in complete remission of my colitis. I eat everything. I tracked my stress problems, and I realized I had a lot of stress with food, family, and I didn't even know. A lot of this stuff is subconscious. Now I am in complete harmony with everybody, and within 2 weeks, all my problems are gone, and I've tried all sorts of diets and supplements. This guy's right. Even Chinese medicine, even Chinese and Ayurvedic medicine and the old medicines, they've been bastardized so much by modern medicine and allopathic medicine, but there's a lot that says it's caused by traumatic events. And he says you will not cure not only your colitis, but you also cure other diseases with this program. And that's how I designed it, so you can apply it to any disease. This is so easy to follow. Somebody with English as a second language can follow it. And this guy who got better from Crohn's and colitis, he didn't speak much English. I need to say something after 2 months of discovering this. My Crohn's and arthritis is completely gone. I gained weight, recovered my life after almost 10 years since having this. Felt great since day 2 of doing the program. Just want everyone to know autoimmune disease names do not exist. My weight was 52 kilograms So I think that's like a little over 100 pounds. And now I gained 16 kilograms, so that's about 40 pounds. Thanks to everyone who shared their information. This is the best. I've talked to many people where GI doctors were going to cut out somebody's small intestine or cut out their colon, and their symptoms were like, let's cut out your colon, it's going to fix all your problems. And you go online and you read the success rate and you're like, are you sure? This is like a very small success rate. And what you call success sounds pretty crap to me. And I'm throwing up all the time. I think my symptoms have something to do with my gallbladder or stomach. We did a colonoscopy. There's not much inflammation in my colon. Why do you think cutting out my colon is going to fix my... I see that all the time. It's terrifying. We do need GI doctors for certain procedures, but you really need to be your own health advocate. Nobody knows your body better than you. And you need to have an education on what your body is really doing. Luckily, this person found my information 3 days before having their colon removed. They were going 30 times a day, and now a year after doing the program, it's like it never happened. It works for constipation and bloating, years. It works on SIBO. So this person did a disinfect and reculture protocol. They tried to kill all the bad bacteria and fungi in their gut, and then they took a bunch of expensive probiotics to fix their gut microbiome. Nothing happened. But then when they started using my program, their UC went completely away in about 2 weeks.
The day that I did German New Medicine, everything was fine because I was taking the supplements for about 2 weeks and still having... seeing no improvement for 2 weeks. German New Medicine hit, and it's like, boom. That day, I've been fine ever since.
I remember his conflict being funny because it was in the sigmoid colon, and the sigmoid's like, this is crap I wanted to get rid of, but I couldn't. The septic tank at his house was in the wrong area, so the county wouldn't let him sell his house until they fixed the septic tank. You gotta dig it up, hire a bulldozer to come over and crane, pick it up and move it. It's this big metal box you bury in the ground that's filled with crap. It's disgusting. They would move it and then put it in the ground and pay people thousands of dollars, and then the city inspector would come by and tell them, oh, it wasn't right. The situation had been done and over with for a long time, but the PTSD triggers were continuing to put his sigmoid colon in and out of overdrive. So with gut issues, after about 5 years to a decade, you kind of just get used to living this poor quality of life. I felt like I was like the frog in the boiling water that slowly gets turned to boiling, and before you know it, you're in boiling water and you don't feel it because the water just heated up so slowly. When I was at my worst, I had a few days where I was going like 20 times a day. Usually when I was bad, I was going maybe 10 times a day, but on average, I was probably going 5 or 6 times a day. And that was already convenient. I can only imagine going to the bathroom 20 times a day for a whole year. It would really do a number on your body and just make life just completely miserable. It is fixable. Just one aha moment turns 40 into 20. That's a lot of data to work from. The average person to get 40 data points is probably going to take them a week. It takes you 1 day. Even when your symptoms are really bad and that sucks, you also have a ton of data to work with. And just one aha moment, 2 aha moments will cut your symptoms from 40 times a day, 20 times a day to 10, 5 times a day very quickly. And I've seen people, even while having diarrhea like 5 times a day, I've still seen people gain 20, 30 pounds in the first month or 2. This person had C. diff, now it's gone. This person had anemia, now it's gone. This person had horrible skin, now it's gone. Irritable bowel syndrome, now it's gone. It's amazing what you can do when you actually address the root cause of the problem. A lot of you might have just money like sitting in your bank account doing nothing and like saving it for a rainy day. Like, this is the time to use it. Money is useless until it's spent, and that is even more true for today with the way that they print money. Like, inflation is so bad right now. 5 years ago, $500 is probably worth $2,000 now. And think about all that lost compounding interest of $10,000 a year on my health, $10,000 a year on my health, $10,000 a year on my health. Just a small, tiny investment. It will pay you back in dividends every single day for the rest of your life. You will use this information every single day for the rest of your life. It will improve your relationships because you understand human nature better. Most importantly, it will help you get your health back. And if you have a family that you're taking care of, kids and stuff like that, it will save you thousands of hours in headache because when they have health problems, and you'll be able to figure it out and spend a lot less money getting them healthy again. I'm really envious of kids who have parents that know German New Medicine. So my educational videos in the workbook, you're getting over 100 session-hour recordings. I'm going to teach you how to treat any condition. That's way more than $5,000 worth of value in your life over the years. I'm going to teach you Attraction 101, so how to keep and attract a mate. That's going to save you well over $5,000 over the course of your life. My unpublished book, tons of great information in there. Also, my Nutrition 101 course is going to be in there. It's going to save you thousands of dollars over the course of your life. You're going to get my 30-day action-based money-back guarantee. So if you actually do the program and you fill out all the pages and you send me pictures of it and you're not happy with your progress, I will give your money back within the first 30 days. You're going to get a yearly value of at least $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 of needless expenses, and you're going to add way over $5,000 of value into your life. It's just amazing the things you're missing out on, and the better decisions that you can make to bring more money and bring more value into your life when you're not sick all the time. So in just the first year, the average person is going to get well over $50,000 in value added to their life for just a small investment. You can barely get a plane ticket for this price. And even if you did get a plane ticket, you wouldn't be able to enjoy it because your health issues will for sure spoil it. You can get this now for $500 or 3 monthly payments of $200. I accept all major credit cards. All my payment processes are done through Stripe. It's a very secure payment platform. And you can also pay through PayPal as well. There's an option there. And literally within seconds, you sign in and you have access. You can binge watch videos that will save your life today. Literally 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In 5 seconds, you could be watching videos that could change your life now. It also works in mobile. It works on desktop. It works on tablet. You have instant access. You have lifetime access to these videos, and you can print out this workbook. If I had to rate Mike's program as 1 being horrible and 10 being the best thing to ever happen to me, I would rate it a 1 million, I think. Honestly, though, as I make my way through the videos, I realize how much research he has put into this. I just want to help you guys heal as fast as possible with the least amount of effort. You are one realization away. All you have to do is follow this step-by-step program, and it will give you the realization you need to free that trauma from your subconscious mind so your subconscious mind stops putting your gut in and out of overdrive. I could only yell at people for so long before I lose my voice or I just become physically exhausted. That is why I made this program. I can't even remember all the steps, step by step. I had to write it down. And this is exactly what I would do. I would force myself to do this if I had to do this all over again. It would have turned my 10-year, $200,000 journey. My case was pretty bad because I had digestive issues my whole life. So it would have turned it into a 3-6 month journey. But for those of you who've only been dealing with this for a couple of years, turn it into a 3-month journey tops.
Yeah, before I brought Mike the Heroic Gut Guy's Guide, my stomach was just disgusting. I was having clawing feeling, pain, inflammation, Crohn's level inflammation really high, diarrhea every day, and within 3 months I'm completely 100% better. Yeah, I put on 15 pounds, feeling amazing.
Was diagnosed with Crohn's and diverticulitis, 30 days in and out of hospitals, racked up some incredible medical bills in that time period. I was bleeding, diarrhea, vomiting for months, this close from surgery. They wanted to put me on Remicade shots. My GI doctor, after my colonoscopy, said that I had one of the worst colons he's ever seen. I lost a ridiculous amount of weight, standing at 6'1", being about 110, 115 pounds. I was losing my hair. And so to be here today, health at a healthy weight and with no symptoms whatsoever, it's a huge blessing. And